So today I have the immense pleasure of sitting down with American astrologer Gray Crawford. Hi, Gray. How are you? Thank you
Hi.
for accepting my invitation.
Yeah, thank you, Sophia. It's really nice to be here with you.
As I have said in the introduction to this podcast, we'll be going through 12 questions, and these 12 questions have already been sent to every astrologer who will appear on this podcast. So the idea is to get both a general and personal perspective on their astrological practice, so that it can inspire us all, whether we are astrology students and other astrologers who, like Gray and me, have already been practicing astrology for a long time. So let's get started. I was yesterday putting things together for the podcast today, and I count 12 questions. I hadn't, it hadn't been in my brought to my attention that it was 12. It's funny because this idea started of this podcast when Jupiter was in Gemini. I have my moon in Gemini, and
Okay.
Jupiter was going through my moon, and it's in the 11th house. So maybe 12 in regards to the Jupiter cycle of 12 years, maybe 12 questions, 12
Hmm.
years.
Yeah. Is your moon in Gemini sort of earlier on or the middle or towards the end?
To towards the end, 21
Towards the
degrees. So yeah.
Okay. Well, that means your moon is on my near my ascendant actually. I'm
Oh,
Gemini rising
there
and
is.
I'm a Gemini moon also, but my Gemini moon is in the beginning of the
Oh,
sign.
okay. No, it's always about synchronicities, right? So yes, the first question, and yeah, to start everything, could you present yourself?
Yeah, so I am an astrologer. Um, I've been studying astrology now for over 26, 27 years or
Mhm.
so. I've been a practicing astrologer for a couple decades now, as far as just doing readings. I have a website, graycrawford.net, that people can check out. I
We will
have
put the link
writing.
below.
Yeah,
Mm,
I have writing that comes up on that. And I also have a YouTube channel now as well that
yeah,
people can follow me there. And I'm starting to move into doing more videos in that way instead of focusing so much on just doing
writing.
writing.
Mm,
Yeah, I teach courses. I have a course coming up on secondary progressions. Maybe we'll talk more
mm,
about that technique in that course at some
yeah,
point. But yeah, if you follow my website, you'll see that periodically having courses and classes. Have a Patreon too that people can check out, and I do a lot of things like that though with like writing and teaching and presenting. But my favorite part of my practice really is getting to work with people, one on one, doing consultations
mm,
and readings. So that's a big part of my practice is just working with people and helping them figure out how to navigate
yeah.
through all the
This,
astrology happening.
yeah, especially now, with
Yeah.
everything that is going on. I know that a lot of people coming. Maybe it's also, yeah, I because it's we are recording this in July, even though the podcast I will start putting the episodes out on my YouTube channel starting in September. But and I can see something now because July normally here for me it's a very calm time. I don't have many. I have less consultations, but not
Hmm.
this year. I don't know if it's the everything that is going on, and also Uranus entering Gemini, where I have my moon, maybe, and maybe for you too.
Hmm.
So the next question is about something that you have already started saying. Could you give us your big three? And by that, for those who don't know, I mean the sun, moon, and ascendant, and also what comes to mind when you think about those three, and if you have some kind of if you perceive some kind of narrative connecting them.
Hmm. Yeah, well, the big three for me are all in Pisces and Gemini. So as I mentioned, I am Gemini rising,
Mm,
and I also have a Gemini moon, but I am also a Pisces sun.
mm,
And being a Gemini, another element of the Pisces is my Mercury is also in Pisces,
mm,
up on my midheaven. So my moon and my Mercury are squaring one another. Um, I also have Jupiter in Pisces near my sun. So there are other things
mm.
about my chart, but
Yeah, of course.
even beyond the big three,
Mm,
the Pisces Gemini influence is even further accentuated and sort of amplified.
mm.
So, I mean, these are mutable signs. So I am very mutable. So there is a quality of having many different interests and being very fluid and flexible. Sometimes having maybe too many things going on
Going
at
on at
once.
once.
Yeah, typical.
I know.
I think of Pisces and Gemini being an astrologer is really a perfect fit because I do think
Mm,
about sort of like translating the mysteries of astrology and interpreting it and really enjoying writing and speaking and teaching. And I think also the one-on-one
mm.
conversations with meeting with people is something else that goes really well with
Yeah,
the Pisces quality, but then combining that with Gemini. I think it's also a very imaginative
yeah, that's what I was going to
combination.
say.
Also, yeah,
Yeah, and your sun is at the end, at the beginning, at the
towards the
mid.
end of Pisces. Yeah.
Oh, so we have a trine because I'm at the end. My sun is at the end of Scorpio.
Oh, awesome. Okay, great.
Again.
Yeah, I
Ah,
recently had Neptune and Saturn
mm,
close to my sun, and they
mm,
will be again. So I guess this isn't coming out until September. Is that what you were
yeah,
saying? Okay, so by the time this comes out, Saturn will be coming back onto my Jupiter and my Sun. It'll be coming
yeah.
back into Pisces, but
Mm.
yeah.
And doing a trine to my sun in Mercury because I have Mercury also at the end of Scorpio. Well,
Oh,
not
awesome.
at 23 and then sun at 28. So
Great, awesome.
yeah,
I know I'm close with some Scorpio Gemini people. I really, being a Pisces Gemini person, I really like Scorpio Gemini people. I really get they're very
yeah,
interesting
we
people.
have
Yeah.
that connection. Yeah, and I haven't said, but my ascendant is Leo, so I
Okay.
have a
Awesome.
Leo ascendant with the Scorpio sun and Gemini moon. Great,
Awesome.
a lot of connections there. Um, so how would you define astrology and especially your own practice of astrology for someone maybe who knows nothing about it or little?
Yeah, I think one of the ideas, I've heard other people say this, but I think it's probably the most simple explanation is that there's some kind of correlation between events and our just experiences in the world. And there's some kind of correlation between this with the movements in the heavens and
Mhm,
these different shifts and cycles playing out somehow connect in with our stories, and they somehow also give us a sense of the quality of time that we are experiencing. And one of my big focuses on astrology, I would say, is about narrative and people's personal narratives and their stories.
Oh,
And
yeah,
yeah,
with all that Pisces and Gemini,
yeah,
it's absolutely something that you should do.
yeah, yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and the other thing about that that's interesting, I think, is in addition to just where, things are moving. So, in the tropical zodiac, we're talking just after Uranus has come into Gemini.
Mm,
And so that's a big deal. There's some kind of change we're all experiencing personally and collectively because now Uranus is in Gemini. instead of being in Taurus, and Uranus is coming into being in a trine with Pluto and Aquarius and a sextile with Saturn and Neptune and Aries, and that like means something.
Yeah.
But then there's also these it's more symbolic timing techniques and other things. One would be secondary progressions, but there's a bunch of other ones
Mm.
from traditional astrology that are not so much about where everything's like moving in the sky right now, but they're sort of these symbolic timing mechanisms or techniques that sort of flow out of the natal chart. And that's another really powerful way of
Yeah.
connecting in with how people's stories are changing across time. But I think that's the main thing for me is making sense of our life story and what's happening with it and what's the next chapter of your life you want to write. I think astrology is really helpful for self-realization
Mm.
as well as self-understanding, self-awareness, and also finding your purpose, your calling in life. Those are the main things
Mm.
I would say I focus on the most with people is fostering self-realization and purpose and calling, that sort of thing.
Yeah. You had already mentioned a little bit at the beginning, but um, how was your journey to astrology? I mean, you as a professional astrologer, when did it start? Was it something that you can pinpoint and say, maybe there was a transit also that was important at that time, or
Mm.
do you?
Yeah, I did have an interest just in general in astrology. I think because I am very Pisces,
Hmm,
there is some of the sun sign Pisces stuff you
yeah,
read, I could just
all the
identify with.
water.
Yeah, because it's not my sun, Jupiter, and Mercury are all in Pisces, and
Hmm,
because I'm Gemini rising, Gemini moon, my Mercury being in Pisces just sort of goes there even more. But I mean, it wasn't like wasn't like just knowing about sun signs wasn't something like, oh, this is what I want to do.
hmm,
But then once somebody told me, I mean, I just had never met anybody that knew anything about astrology, and the first conversation I had with somebody that did, and they asked me what you just asked me, like, what's your, they were like, well, what's your moon, what's your rising, and
yeah,
I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, there's this whole, you have a chart, and
yeah.
for some reason, there was something really intuitive about that I just was like immediately fascinated by. I know some people, I think they can be more skeptical with astrology. They need to really see it work. And I did need to see it work,
Hmm,
but I did actually have something intuitively about it
hmm,
just kind of made sense to me that this would be something that you could do. And so I wanted to see if it worked, obviously. And then I just spent many years just learning about it on my own. I eventually met an astrologer who could give me a reading, and I could take classes from her. And she would do local talks here talking about the transits. So I was able to start learning about that as well. And then I just started doing some consultations here and there.
hmm,
It just sort of naturally built off of that. And
hmm,
then once I started, for me, probably the Pisces Gemini, it was through writing. So I create a website and I'd be writing about the astrology going on. And that was really initially how people started connecting with me from reading my writing and then
hmm.
wanting to work with me that way. And it just sort of one thing came after the other sort of thing
Yeah.
from there.
I
Yeah.
I can see that Jupiter in Pisces being very open to it, and all the idea of no limitation in Pisces. So you were open to exploring astrology, even
Hmm.
though you wanted to see it at work, but
Hmm.
there was not that hyper skeptical way of.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can see people having that really strong and not wanting to go further, or but yeah, I think that's also something maybe common, maybe for when we have a lot of water in our chart or something
Mm.
like that.
Did you have, was that similar for you that you were just sort of right
Well,
away?
I started when I was very little. When I was 8 years old, I said to my mother and father that I wanted to be an astrologer, although I didn't know a lot about it.
That's
But the
awesome.
idea of it was something that because I started reading, mythology, and
Hmm.
because I had a neighbor who had a very big library, and we didn't had any books at home, or not many. And he had this huge library of mythology, planets, wildlife, everything like that. And it absolutely, I spent my afternoons there after school. And
Wow.
one day he told me about astrology and the link to mythology, and I thought that was fascinating. But then, well, I was too little, and then a little bit later, I started. But I never thought about being an astrologer, or at least a professional one, until the second North Node return
Okay.
at around 37 years old or something like
Okay.
that. It
Yeah.
was something that um, I never really thought about being professional. But astrology was always there. I have been studying for more than, 30 years on and off.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's funny.
Was that also near your third, I guess it was a little bit after your third Jupiter return, so not really so
Mm.
much a Jupiter return, more
It,
of the
it
nodal
was really
thing.
when there was the square from Saturn to Saturn,
Okay. Yeah.
you
That's
know,
a big trend.
mm,
Well, when
and
you mentioned yeah. Hmm.
from 36 to 38, around that time. It took a few years to um, come to the idea that, yeah, I could
Yeah, you
be an
can do
astrologer,
this.
something like and then of course studying with teachers and all of that.
Yeah, I was, I guess, interested before that, but that's a fairly similar age to where I started getting a lot more momentum going and seeming like starting to put myself out there more.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm realizing you'd asked about the transit question,
Mm.
and there are different ones, but one of them for sure is the second Jupiter return is
Mm.
around my second Jupiter return is around the time that I realized there was like natal charts, and this is something that I could start studying. And then it was around my third Jupiter return. Um, I was starting to put myself out there. There was like a much bigger wave coming in then of like, okay, I need to start putting myself out there
Mm.
more. This is something that I can
Mm.
be more visible with and start doing more of. Yeah.
And do you think that with Neptune coming to Pisces also helped you in doing that and
It
being
did
more
actually. Yeah, that's a good point.
visible?
Yeah, there's a couple interesting things with that. One would be, yeah, when Neptune first came into Pisces, that's my Mercury and midheaven are earlier in Pisces.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
So that was around the time that I did get my website going and I started
Mm.
writing to put my writing out there.
Yeah.
And then more recently, when Neptune has gone over my Sun and Jupiter,
Yeah.
um, that somehow opened me up to actually finally doing like YouTube videos, which I was never really doing before. So then I've gotten a little bit more comfortable doing
Yeah.
this type of thing.
Yeah,
So
because that it made the square to your ascendant also,
yeah,
no?
that also came in
Mm.
around during that general time. Yeah.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's fascinating also. Um, so, do you stay informed about developments or revivals in the field of astrology? And do you think that it's something that is important for astrologers to do, to continue to study, to continue to learn, and
Yeah.
even if it's about basic concepts? Well, with all your Gemini, I think you will say yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely a lifelong astrology student, I'd say. I don't
Yeah.
know at what point I'd ever get to a point where there wouldn't be something I'd want to be learning more about and getting deeper into. but yeah, I've definitely done that. And over the course of my practice, I've even changed the way I practice. I learned more of like a, I guess, sort of like a 20th century type of astrology originally, and
Mm,
was interested in some psychological astrology. I was a psychology major in college.
mm,
And similar actually to astrology, when I, even in the first class, before I'd even really read any Carl Jung or depth psychology, just hearing about, like they were talking about here, like here's Sigmund Freud and here's Jung, just really basic.
yeah.
And right away I was like, oh, I think Jung sounds really cool. So I had like this depth psychology interest also. And then I went through a period of getting into evolutionary astrology.
Yeah.
And then I got more into learning traditional astrology and Hellenistic astrology. At one point, I went back and did learned traditional horary astrology, like based more on the William Lilly
Mm,
method. Um, I've gotten into working with fixed stars. But yeah, especially moving into learning a lot of these more traditional astrology techniques. That was over a decade now that I did that. Was making that shift, but that was something that was a pretty more dramatic shift at the outset because it was some different things going on there. So and yeah, I just always am paying attention to as much as I can what's going on, and if there's anything new coming up that people are talking about,
mhm.
or
Attending
often
lectures.
it's old ideas,
Mm,
even like
yeah.
older techniques or ideas, and but something I
Yeah.
don't know.
Revised
Yeah, I'm
and.
always just looking.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm always interested in learning more. Hmm.
Yeah, because that's something I also teach. So sometimes
Mm,
you have these people, they have already studied a lot and they
hmm.
have this idea that maybe it's something that it's not going to be for them because they have already studied. But I believe that each astrologer has his own way of also expressing something and that has already been learned. So
Hmm.
if it really speaks to you, if it calls you, maybe that there's something there to unveil.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I will absolutely the same. Never too many books are never too many, and
Yeah.
lectures and all of that. um, So, are there any astrologers or books that have particularly influenced your work, and which ones and why?
Well, I'd say my biggest influence is really Demetra George,
Mm.
and she's been
Great
an influence.
podcast. I saw it
Oh,
with Jason Holly.
oh
Great,
yeah, yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, she's a major influence on me because, like you, I'm also really into mythology,
Mm.
and that's been a big area of interest. And so when I first came across her work in Asteroid Goddesses, I was just really excited about how the asteroids could bring in mythology, and I'd always
Mm.
already been fascinated by the way ideas and dynamics within mythology could be showing up in astrology. And so that was an initial draw of mine to her. She also always had an influence from Dane Rudhyar that you
Mm.
can see, especially when before she went fully into Hellenistic astrology. And Dane Rudhyar was an author when I came across him. It's probably the Pisces Mercury he has. There's some way of he's very imaginative and
Yeah.
evocative with his
Mm.
language, and he was helpful for me just to there's a lot of imagination there, and
Yeah,
that I really liked. Mm.
he is very famous here in France,
Oh
of
yeah,
course, because he's
of
French,
course, yeah,
and
yeah,
he's very in the field of astrology, very
yeah,
it's really a reference for
yeah,
many, if not all. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so he has some books on like lunation cycle, for example,
Mm.
secondary progressions. Demetra had a Finding Your Way Through the Dark workbook where she took Rudhyar's ideas on the progressed lunar
Mm.
cycle
I
and
haven't
was in
read that
there.
one.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it was a helpful book for me at the time because
Mm,
it was set up like a workbook so you could write out your progress lunation phase, secondary progression lunation phases, and I found that book really helpful. But then what happened was I went to an evolutionary astrology conference and Demetra was speaking at it. This was in like 2011. And I was already vaguely familiar that she was starting to do Hellenistic astrology because she had this authentic self, or I forget what the name of that book is, her earlier book that was referencing some of the Hellenistic stuff she's
mm,
doing. And but I remember seeing her talk. She did a talk on Demeter and Ceres, and I actually got a reading from her there. And she was doing a whole sign, and I just got more interested then at that point in learning Hellenistic astrology from her, and then other people like Chris Brennan had a
mm,
course. I did later. I ended up getting even certified with through Demetra and going to some of her retreats. But she's been a big influence because then, in addition to that more mythological Rudyard type of astrology, I then got really into learning Hellenistic astrology through her. And
mm.
there's lots of old astrology books. I could mention as well from the tradition. I guess some would be like Dorotheus, Phidias Valens, Marsilio Ficino,
Oh,
Lilly,
love
Abu
it.
Mashar, all those types of things. I guess another one would be Richard Tarnas, though, with the
Yes.
Cosmos and Psyche.
Mm,
And then even the French André Barbeau. I only have one book of his translated, but that cyclical mundane astrology I've always been also really into, and it helps inform how I talk to people also,
mm.
that type of cyclical outer planet, especially configurations and how that's sort of shaping events. Brian Clark would be another
Oh,
one. I
yes.
really like
Yeah,
him.
me
And
too. That's what I like about your astrology is that there are many influences, and
mm,
I do love it because it's something that I do also. I started with modern astrology, and then
uh-huh.
I went back and also learned Hellenistic.
Cool.
I also had a course of elective astrology with Luis Ribeiro. Do you know, maybe you know him?
Oh
He has
yeah,
a
I do.
school in Portugal because I'm
Yeah.
Portuguese living in France.
Wow.
So, um,
Yeah, his book on the heavenly
yeah,
spheres
yes,
is a that's an influential book for me. That was a
yeah,
book that really helped me
beautiful, yeah,
learn
beautiful
traditional
book. Mm.
astrology. That's a
Me
great
too,
one.
me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
What other types of knowledge inform and
Hmm.
nourish your astrological practice? And do you think that might be a major key element for any astrologer who wants to develop their approach and practice of astrology? The idea of
Yeah.
combining maybe some fields or being nourished by um, um, yeah, some other field in particular.
Well, like I mentioned, I did study psychology when I was
Mm,
younger, and I've had jobs working as a teacher and advisor, which wasn't really being like a therapist, but it had like a advising counseling in addition to being a teacher. And had social work jobs too, out in the community at times. So there is sort of a general psychological type of um, that aspect of that can come in with astrology consultations that I have some awareness of and interest in. I'm interested in psychological ideas. You mentioned mythology. I guess there's a some people don't think mythology and astrology goes
yeah.
together,
Mm,
but they are, and so they are actually separate fields. But that's a big influence for me. And even a new thing related to that, I would say, is travel. And last year, you mentioned that podcast that I did with Demetra George and Jason Hawley on series. Jason Hawley, an astrologer, and I co-led like this tour of going to different sacred sites in Greece.
mhm.
And that was really powerful to actually have that
Mm,
kind of pilgrimage and go to where these places are, where the homes of the gods and goddesses. And that really brought the mythology and things really alive for me in ways that I feel like I'm still integrating it.
yeah.
And
I saw
but
that
that was really nourishing to do. Yeah. Mm.
you talked about it. Was that Astromagia? Do you
Oh
know
yeah.
that website?
Yeah. Are you
I
part
th
of Astrologia?
I'm a member, yeah.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, I did. Me and my wife did a
yeah.
talk there talking
Mm,
about. Oh, so you were able to see that?
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I didn't realize
Well,
that.
my
Yeah.
Gemini moon goes everywhere. And
Yeah,
also the
awesome.
Scorpio
I
IBS.
should have mentioned that astrological magic is something else I've been
Mm.
interested in too.
Yeah, me too.
Divination would be another thing. I mean, I guess I know it's similar, but um, tarot and runes are really the things that I do the most. But just having a divinatory practice, I think, is helpful because I do see astrology as being, very aligned with being very divinatory.
Mm,
And so having other ways of doing divination, I think, are helpful just to have different
mm.
perspectives on it.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so I mean, I think that what you said about uh, the other works you have done before or social in the social
Hmm.
fields and also the psychology that you have studied. I mean, I think that might be something that is very um, insightful today for what you do. So how do you approach sensitive issues or potentially difficult or challenging transit progressions, whatever, in a
Hmm.
consultation? So
Yeah, I guess whatever it is, I, well, this gets into a tricky question when people talk about fate and free will and all this stuff. I mean, I definitely believe there's forces of fate and destiny operating, but
mm,
I've never been able to completely subscribe to absolutely everything being predetermined completely. Although, obviously, from a certain standpoint, once things are happening and you look back, everything led up to that moment. But so I tend to approach things um, that way, and also, I don't take the perspective that um, I know everything that's going to happen to this person in this like predetermined way, and I can just be like telling them
mm,
what's going to be happening
of course.
in their life, absolutely, or anything like that. I mean, there definitely can be sort of predictive types of concepts or
Mm,
ideas or patterns I might bring up. So typically, if it's something really difficult, I would try to just be very validating about whatever and affirming of whatever experience they're having. And I usually just also tend to be asking people questions about their life. So I'm already kind of getting a sense
of course.
of where they're coming from and what's going on with them. I never just like come in and start telling
Mm,
somebody like,
yeah, of course.
this is what this
Someone
means. This is what
come,
this means.
yeah, when someone comes to you, most of the time, well, that's what happens to me. They have an issue or a subject that they want
Hmm.
to develop. So
Yeah.
starting from there also already gives informs us about. And do
Yeah.
you think because Richard Tarnas, he has this quote where he said something like, astrology is not concretely predictive, it's
Mm.
archetypally predictive, something like
Yeah,
that.
I do agree with that. And like Richard Tarnas also talks about, there's this multivalence,
Mm,
there's these different potentials. So I'll usually do that. I'll sort of talk about potential things that could happen, and I won't hold back from saying, well, I'm not going to tell somebody like a Saturn transit is just going to be easy,
mm.
pleasant.
Yeah, of course,
Um,
reality. We need
but
reality.
yeah, but sort of like that with like you're saying with reality, I'll try to talk about different sides. So like maybe this
Yeah,
will feel like a lot of pressure
absolutely.
and weight.
Mm,
You might feel, like you could have fears come up and feeling constrained or things kind of pressing down on you. But, Saturn transits can also make you have to respond to that, and you can, you also can really build things and build new things in your life, and
Mm,
things will come up, by having this adversity, whatever your response is going to lead to, you
yeah.
know, these
Uh,
newfound strengths or things you bring into your life potentially as well. So it can have different
yeah, bringing
results.
those
Yeah.
as archetypes are whole. So maybe that's why also that idea of multivalence in the idea that uh, bringing to the perspective of the person we have um, where we are having the consultation with all of those aspects of wholeness of the archetype, and then they can be more aware of what is going on or coming. Um, when you when you talked about fate and free will,
Hmm.
I immediately thought about, the book by Liz Green, The Astrology of Fate.
Yes.
It's an amazing book, and I can't remember what exactly what was what I read there about, because she it's the best quote I have ever read about um, putting together fate and free will. And she says it in a way that it's absolutely perfect. So I say to everyone who has that book to go there, to go back to that book. And in the end pages, there is a concept that she brings forth, and that tells us a little bit about that construction of mingling those two concepts that makes perfect sense, I think. um,
Yeah. Sort of like the idea that when you're really on your path or following your guiding star or daimon or however you want to talk
yeah.
about it, like that yeah, there's a real fatefulness then I feel like that just happens like
Mm. Yeah, there's
by making that you
mm,
could say choice, but that's, people can play around with, well, did you choose that? But I mean,
yeah.
some people don't. I feel like some people don't really follow fully what that is for them.
I feel
So
that
there are, yeah.
yeah, that might be something like, well, I see it as more like some, like an artist who the idea of a sketch,
Hmm.
the drawing is not completely perfect, you are going to perfect it,
Mm.
but the destiny is the idea of a sketch, and then you go and you put
Mm.
more color in there or less in there, and um, you work with that idea of destiny. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the art analogy too. I think actually I've heard Luis, who you mentioned,
Mm,
say something, or maybe it was his um, wife that did. But I think they were talking about maybe the bounds being these like color spectrums.
mm,
And there's a line in Firmicus Maternus alluding to this as well. But I think there's something interesting seeing things as sort of like like colors and different shades of
mm. Yeah.
coloring in a way. But that kind of goes with what you're saying about the sketch and filling that out, or whether it's like a play or a song. It's like how are you
Mm.
playing this song or
It's
playing this game or playing this performance, whatever. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Marsilio Ficino also talks about colors, and
Mm.
yeah, it makes me think about that also. Mm. Um, so what do you prefer in astrology, the subjective experience or the technique, and why? And
Mm.
if it's the technique, what is your favorite technique, if any?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I guess one thing about that, the subjective experience of the technique. I mean, one thing I think about is techniques have become there's been increasing focus on
Yeah.
techniques, and there's been all this great
Mm.
traditional astrology coming back, and a lot of it is concrete predictive. And especially the way some of it can kind of come with keywords. It almost just seems like it's this like, I don't know, the way I hear some people talk about it, I feel like they're just looking at things like it's just like some computer program,
Mm.
and you just get this chart and it's just going to spit out this is what it all means, and this is what's going to happen. I'm just going to use this technique and tell you what's going to happen. And I think the consciousness that's being brought to the technique is really important. So I guess I don't know which one I favor, but I do not favor technique without the subjective
Mm.
consciousness, and the sense of intuition and divination being brought to it. I think like Jeffrey Cornelius's book, The Moment of
Yes.
Astrology, I think is really fascinating.
Mm.
And there's some real ideas he makes you think about with like the chart of the moment and people's just obsession with that. That kind of goes back to Ptolemy, and even people like Dane Rudhyar are essentially doing, and that the consciousness of the astrologer that's being brought to that technique and how that's interfacing with the person in the field of the moment and what's going on. I feel like that's the place that we really need to be
Mm.
tuned into to know, have a better sense of what to say, or how to interpret this, because there is a you could just have him having memorized different keywords of what different things mean, and just be spitting that out, I guess. But I
Mm.
think even in there's always some kind of the consciousness that's being brought. Um, there's a shaping for, I don't know, there is something really important about that.
Yeah.
So I think there's a real importance in bringing them together,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Because, well, I have this feeling that too much technique might be drying out the
Mm-hmm.
essence of astrology, um,
Mm-hmm.
which is, well, at least for me, it's an art form,
Mm-hmm.
not a
Yeah.
science, but everyone has its own, of course, idea
Yeah.
of it. So I see it more like an art form. So
Mm-hmm.
the subjective is absolutely important, but also the technique,
Mm-hmm.
of course. There are foundations
Mm-hmm.
that need to be there to help everything. So yeah, I completely agree
Yeah.
what you say. Mm.
Yeah. When you asked about my favorite, I mean, my favorite really is still secondary progressions. That's been my favorite technique for a long time. It's the first
I think it's
time it,
by with that I found you one day. You were
okay.
talking about in a podcast, I think, about Mercury in the
Okay.
progressed Mercury. It
Progressive
was,
Mercury.
yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I've done talks on that before, and I've been on podcasts talking about that
Mm.
before. Yeah, and that was basically taking so secondary progressions are based on there's a correspondence between our experience of like a solar day with a year, essentially. So we're watching like the cycles kind of unfold out of the natal chart. And yeah, I mean, the progressed lunation cycle is something people have been into for a long time. Dane Rudhyar was
Yeah.
really influential. That's one of the reasons
Mm.
I like him so much. And paying attention to where the sun and the moon are moving in secondary progressions and the lunar phase is telling a story. Yeah, and then because I got really into paying attention to Mercury in progressions, and then I was noticing you can do the same thing with Mercury. So that's what that
Mm.
talk was, is
Yeah,
you basically
it
look at
was,
the
yeah.
synodic cycle of Mercury and use that as another way, kind of like the progressed lunation cycle to
Mhm.
yeah, it definitely really tells a story with people.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, I remember
mhm,
that because my Mercury is has well in progression. It hasn't yet been into retrograde, but it will be in a few
it
years.
will
So I
be
was
okay.
already checking that. Yeah.
Cool.
I also really love progressions. I will also be doing a lecture for ISAR, well, a webinar
Oh,
for ISAR in November. About the relationship between the sun and the moon. Um, and yeah, the
in
progressions.
secondary
Yeah.
progressions? Oh, awesome. That's that you
Um,
saw our Star Club?
yeah,
Okay, cool. I'll have
yeah.
to look for
I
that.
loved your uh, the webinar you have made done with about Chiron,
Oh,
uh,
cool. Yeah, I did one for
because
Chiron for them.
I
Yeah.
will be 50 this year, so
Oh,
yeah, I'm entering the Chiron. And you too, I guess that's what you said on the podcast, yes?
yeah, yeah.
50.
So
Oh
you're
yeah,
gonna be 50 in 2025?
yeah, in November because I'm a Scorpio, so it will be I'm from
You're a
75.
Scorpio. Okay, yeah. Awesome. We're basically the same age, and I'm the Pisces in 1975.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
I recently turned 50.
Mm,
And yes, I've been having my Chiron return,
mm,
and in fact, I've had I guess three. I've had all the exact hits by degree in minutes so far, but there will be one more where when Chiron goes retrograde back, it'll get pretty close. Where I feel
mm.
like I don't think it's totally over, but yeah, that's why I partially did that
Yeah. You
particular
have
lecture.
Chiron
Yeah.
at 23, 24 degrees of Libra.
22 to
22.
22,
Yeah.
23 Aries. Yeah.
Okay. Me, it's 24. So
Yeah.
haven't had yet, but coming.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, probably doing this podcast is probably part of it for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, progressions. And do you have a favorite technique from the Hellenistic medieval or
Hmm.
the medieval period?
Yeah, I mean, the one I've gotten really into is zodiacal releasing.
No.
I liked
Mm-hmm.
zodiacal releasing already, and then I ended up I've been teaching a course on zodiacal releasing for Kepler College. And, when you teach a course, you have to
Learn a lot.
get into
You
it
do
even
learn a lot.
more. And, yeah, there's a way I've come to work with zodiacal releasing it's still similar to ways people might see it. I was definitely influenced by the way Demetra George was teaching it in a retreat that I attended with her that made a lot of sense to me. And I think that zodiacal releasing is another one that works really well with like people's
Hmm.
life stories
I
and
will have to check
as like these
your
storytelling
course.
timings.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't really get the zodiacal releasing. I adore Firdaria.
Yeah.
Firdaria is
Oh, okay.
everything checks and points exactly about all my life course. But zodiacal releasing, I haven't yet had the wow moment about it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Yeah, it's always interesting how different ones for different people. Because
yeah,
like for Daria, it was always one for everyone. I always hear people go like, "Oh, is this?" And then I'm like, "Well, I think it's because sometimes people focus on like when they're changing and or things happen." But
mm,
honestly, though, over time, the more I've looked at for Daria, I've been like, "Okay, I see it more now." And
yeah,
I want to actually. That's one that I would like to get
mm,
more into. The ones I use the most I would say, would be zodiacal releasing and annual profections
yeah,
and secondary progressions. And I've been getting more recently into circumambulation of the
mm,
bounds, some called distributions of the bounds. But I'm still, that's one that I'm trying to learn. I'm wanting to deepen my understanding of at the moment. For Darius one that, yeah, I like, another great one that, um,
and
I
maybe
want to get more into.
maybe I like Ferdaria because I'm from the night sect, so I really like
Okay.
now. No, I'm
Have you
kidding.
been in a good period for
I've
that?
just entered the Venus period.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
Nice.
And I got
I've
got
been in a
married.
Saturn period. That's probably why I'm like, I don't like that one.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Um, so what kind or what boundaries do you set for yourself in a consultation if you do? And what do you
hmm
think is important for astrologers to know about boundaries when doing consultations?
Yeah, I think boundaries are really important. It's good to know ahead of time, like what you're comfortable talking about and whatnot. I
Mm,
mean, sort of like we were just saying, I don't like to tell people take on this role that like I know everything is going to happen, just telling
Yeah.
them what's going to happen. I don't get into, um, you know, um, like it would think something would have to get to this really divinatory type of deep conversation for me to broach topics like death. That's not something I get
Mm.
into, or like um, seeing something and be like, oh, that means
I
this
love
person's gonna.
talking about death. I'm a Scorpio, but not in
Yeah, yeah,
consultations.
yeah. Not in
No,
consultations.
that's my boundary.
And I've heard people say this that other astrologers have been like seeing this transit and like, oh, that means your father's gonna
Mm,
die, and like, and it didn't happen.
of course.
And then a person was thinking it might happen because of that,
Mm,
and it didn't. And and you know, some I guess along those lines, like I am not. I know some. I guess I do know a little bit of medical astrology, but I'm not a medical astrologer.
yeah.
So people that are coming with that kind of
Mm,
thing, you know, I would want to refer them to somebody
yeah,
else.
definitely.
I also don't want to actually, if you saw the series podcast, Demetra said something almost exactly like this, what I'm about to say in that podcast. But you know, even though I am into psychological things, doing a reading with somebody, I don't want to like activate a bunch of things that
Yeah,
the
yeah, I
person's just
remember.
gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, she used to saying that,
Mm,
and I totally agree with that.
hmm.
Sometimes people can book up a few with me, and then at least I know they're going to be coming back. But even in that case, it's going to tend to be a limited thing. It's not like
Mm.
you're in therapy and you're meeting with them every week. Um,
There can be
so
someone like that. I have a client that I
hmm,
have been seeing, um, yeah, every month for 8 years now. So
that's amazing. Yeah.
that's something that we
So
can
that's
build on.
different. That is
Yeah.
something. If you're
Mm,
seeing somebody every month for like going on years like that, that's
mm,
totally different.
mm,
Um, and not to say I won't want to go into deep places with people, but yeah, just trying to be aware of that, you know. Um, or if somebody seems to be having mental health issues and they're not
mm.
seeing somebody about that, then you know, having a referral or
Yeah.
to suggest somebody to help them
Yeah.
see
Yeah,
somebody
it's very important.
like that.
The idea of knowing when where your boundaries are, and referring other astrologers, maybe in the medical field, maybe the
Hmm.
like Kyra Sutherland.
Oh yeah,
Uh, she is the
she's a great. Kira
yeah.
Sutherland's great.
Mm.
Yeah.
um, or psychologists or
Hmm.
whatever. Yeah, yeah, that's something very important for everyone who is doing astrology as a student. When we are starting, maybe we can take everyone because we want to practice and we want to please also.
Yeah.
So when knowing when to stop, it's very important.
Yeah, and if
Um,
you know therapists that are also astrologers, that can be another.
yeah.
There's been people like that I've referred people to before because they can
Mm,
do the therapy but still talk about the astrology if they're interested. Yeah.
yeah. So, what is the greatest satisfaction you get from your work as an astrologer? Maybe one or two things if you want
Yeah, I
to
mean, I would say
share.
the typically it's getting the consultations and getting to work with people and just especially when you're really kind of validating or affirming, you know, that they're on the right path. 'Cause a lot of times people are coming and they're wanting to do something or they're working on something and they're whatever reason questioning it or just wanting to get insight about it. And then it'll, you know, a lot of times it'll just be like, yes, everything's really
Hmm.
pointing to this, and it's incredibly evocative, and there's this much kind of larger story or pattern, you know, you're kind of connecting them to, and it feels really validating for
Hmm.
them about the path that they're on or some decision that they've made or choice they've been facing. So that kind of encouragement is, yeah, really meaningful to me, as well as just whenever there's any kind of deeper awareness about themselves or realizations that you can help somebody make. That's
Yeah.
also really powerful.
And you on your own well research and
Hmm.
study of astrology, do you I say that because I love the philosophy of astrology, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
becoming something even more important for me than doing one-on-one consultations. It's something that's starting to be really big, and that I also share in the teachings that I do. And I have a lot of yeah, it's really something that brings me a lot of pleasure um,
Yeah.
and satisfaction. Do you
Yeah, I
have
would say
something
that
like
also
that?
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, when I have to give a talk
yeah,
at a conference or a webinar or I'm teaching a class, that's the other big thing for me.
mm.
Definitely being able to
Doing the
have these
research. Yeah,
yeah, doing research and seeing different connections and coming up with a new way to talk about something or bring a different perspective in to deepen meaning of whatever it is. Yeah, that's really exciting for me as well. That's I think the Pisces Gemini thing I have. It's definitely
yeah.
a big thing for me.
Mm. And the last question, are there any common
Hmm.
misconceptions from your own point of view about astrology that you would like to correct? Or yeah,
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm realizing
a
that was one
Scorpio's
where when I was
question.
yeah, when I was I'm realizing now when I was looking at these questions like, oh, that's a good one. I have to think more about that, and I never really came up with a really direct answer to that. I mean, there are misconceptions about astrology. I mean, I guess it just depends on
Yeah, it depends
what
on
year,
where you
what,
are.
where you
Yeah.
are with it. So, like, there's some people that
Mhm.
don't realize um, how complex it is, or so
Yeah,
much. There's more
definitely.
nuance. I think probably the fact that there's just really great nuance and great complex symbolism, and I do think there's a real mystery about astrology that I think is actually fundamental to it. And even the people that get really good at certain types of predictive well, with divination, sometimes yeah, with divination, if you're just on this divinatory thing, you can just see something or connect into something that's this divinatory type of moment that occurs. But there is just a lot more nuance to things, and sometimes people can just be, to me, a little too like black and white or
Mm,
too I think being
mhm.
concrete and
Yeah.
being specific is good. I don't think things should just be like
Mm.
nebulous and like
Yeah, but too
nothing
much of
really means
it.
anything.
Yeah.
But if all you're looking at is like one thing and like
Mm.
you just there's just like this there's so that all the placements and where they are, they're just embedded in this real complex field and dynamic in the chart. And even the chart itself, it's just like this weird two-dimensional
And
map
always
we've
evolving also.
constructed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, likely we're going to enter some period with all the technology changes. I don't know what's going to happen, but
Yeah.
there's potentially some kind of multi-dimensional astrology that becomes possible that we're I don't know how that's all going to work, but yeah, just that there's way more nuance, and it's important really being present with the person, and um I guess there's sort of like conversations that you can have with the symbolism too. Like the symbolism can kind of
Yeah.
speak to you, or something might really draw your attention. Does
Mm.
that make sense? I think
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because
there's just more. Mm,
that made me think about what we were saying earlier, sorry, about the idea of too much technique can
Mm-hmm.
also dry the
Mm-hmm.
astrology, and that comes to that, I think. When every when we really when we only want to know yes, no, is it really this way? That's not the real answer that we are getting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's just something that is very superficial. We don't go, well, I mean, that means that if you are making astrology or practicing astrology, it's a better word, to know yourself and know how to um, evolve in this life, this complicated life. um, Knowing things in advance might not be the best way to go around, and because those are not your own answers. I think someone is giving them to you, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, you just need experience. And even it's interesting with like, so let's just say somebody could really predict everything that's going to happen to somebody
Mm,
with astrology. And then they're like, well, don't do that because that's going to fail.
mm.
But like maybe because a lot of times people do fail at something or something doesn't go the way they want it, but that becomes the
The seed
essential
for
thing.
something
Yeah,
else
they
to
only get
bloom.
to that next thing because they
Mm.
have to go through that. So I think that's something that's also it gets really yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's about the experience, I guess, astrology,
Hmm.
right? And having those answers of yes or no, it's there's no experience there of anything,
Hmm.
I guess. But
Yeah, you mentioned
well,
you like Brian Clark. He has a
yeah,
book.
Artistry
What's
of
it?
Astrology.
Maybe is
That
it the
book is
soul
amazing.
symbol and imagination or something? Yeah, I
Oh,
really love.
maybe no. Um,
Maybe it's. I'm not sure.
the
In any
Artistry of
case,
Astrology is a book with the an art form, a woman in the cover. I don't know if you remember.
I
Yeah.
think that's the one that I'm thinking of. I might
Mm.
not be remembering the
Blue.
title, but
It's blue.
yeah, yeah. And there's a part where he talks about this, which I always have really liked, and that you do need to learn technique, and you obviously have to memorize keywords in the beginning and know what all these things mean. But if all you're doing is looking at it and this is what it means, and there's nothing else going on, it's actually kind of it's not alive. It's dead, and
Yeah.
so it's like
The idea of a
it's
cookbook.
all
Yeah.
very alive. Yeah, it's all. I guess it's all just very alive, and that
Mm.
there's a real relationality with what's happening in the chart and the symbols and the person that you're talking to
Hmm.
that
Yeah. So
needs to be.
the misconception would be that there's more to astrology than what people think there is. Anyway, it's a good way to finish, and also to you're going to tell us where we can find you, and also if you have anything coming up also into September, October, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Gray Crawford, Gray Crawford.net's my website, so people can go there and subscribe. Yeah, I was going to mention the secondary progressions course, but it will be over by then.
Mm,
When you mentioned zodiacal releasing, I'm most likely going to be teaching. I am planning to teach a zodiacal releasing course towards the end of October
mm, yeah,
for Kepler College, and
yeah,
so I will announce it on my website. But if you're looking at
mm,
the Kepler College website, and in fact, there are some really amazing classes through Kepler College. I'm actually the coordinator of a new Hellenistic astrology certificate that's coming through Kepler College right
right.
now. And so there's a natal one, and it's also one on timing techniques.
Mm,
And so the zodiacal releasing one I have, in addition to learning that, people could get a certificate in timing techniques. We have someone teaching circumambulation of the bounds or distribution to the bounds, somebody teaching decennials.
yeah.
There'll be like the minor. So that's all something that people can check out on the
I will
Kepler
put the links
College
because
website.
I will check at that time when
Hmm.
this episode will be released. Maybe there will be already links. I will find them as I
Yeah.
always do. My
Awesome.
Gemini moon
It's
will
a
find
Gemini
them, so no
Scorpio.
problem.
Yeah. Yeah,
I will
totally.
put your Instagram also because I have it. I am
Yeah.
subscribed to it. Um,
Also, Jason Hawley, you mentioned
yeah,
there's a podcast I did with him and Demetra George recently.
yeah, I will put the
We
link.
are going to be teaching a course probably either at the end of October or beginning of November where we go through the night planets like Venus, Mars, and the moon, and it'll be like
Mm,
a few weeks on each one. And that's using more of a mythological,
mm,
experiential, astrological approach, which has been really fascinating. We've been doing one recently on Mercury, Chiron, and Ceres, which has been a really cool experience. So we're going to do
okay.
on Venus, Mars, and the moon, and that'll be something that I'll again announce later as
Mm,
well. And yeah, so that'll be
okay, I
probably
will
after
have
you
a,
release this.
yeah,
Yeah.
I will definitely have those links.
Okay,
So
awesome.
thank you so much and all the best.
Yeah, thank you.
And see you soon.
Yep,
Bye.
nice to meet you. Bye.